Hi, I'm Dr. Emma Wells, and join me as I explore this fantastic historical trail, Saint Cuthbert's Way. Here, Saint Cuthbert's Way cuts through Yeavering Bell. This is the largest Iron Age hill fort in Northumberland, dominating the North Cheviot hill fort of the National Park. Covering over 13 acres, it featured an important Iron Age royal settlement with stone ramparts 10 feet thick and inside around 125 huts. The large ditched enclosure around the bell's eastern summit is later than the hut platforms that surround it. The hill fort is usually thought to date from the latter half of the first millennium BC, although it could be earlier, such as the late Bronze Age. The word Yeavering comes from the Brittonic words Gaffer and Bryn, meaning goat hill, as around this area are many feral goats. At the foot of Yeavering Bell, you can see the Gefrin Memorial, an 8-foot stone wall behind which the royal palace is said to have stood. Here we are at Ad Gefrin, the site of King Edwin's 7th century royal palace. Nothing survives of the palace except a monument and an empty field. One of the most famous archaeological sites in early medieval Britain, it was excavated by world-renowned archaeologist Brian Hope Taylor in the 1960s. They revealed evidence from a settlement from the period of Christian conversion from the 6th to the 7th century. The way then passes through St Cuthbert's Cave Wood towards the cave itself, perhaps one of the most evocative sights of the entire route. Known locally as Cuddy's Cove, Cuddy being an affectionate term for Cuthbert, it is said to be one of the places where Cuthbert tended his sheep as a child. A clear path leads down to the large natural sandstone outcrop located within the dense wood. The outcrop is supported by a pillar, while an area in front is contained within an enclosure formed by an earthen bank. This may relate to its later use as a 19th century lambing pen. It's also believed that Cuthbert lived here as a hermit in between spells on the islands of Innerfarne and Lindisfarne. While the monks of Lindisfarne also stopped on their journey when fleeing the invading Danes, burying the exhumed body of Cuthbert in the 9th century. Lindisfarne, or Holy Island as it is known, is claimed to be the holiest place in all of England, and it is certainly one of the most famous Christian sites in Western Europe. From here, we arrive at perhaps the most spiritual and evocative part of the journey, where we can literally trace the steps of Pilgrims Path from the Causeway route to Holy Island. This is known as the Pilgrims Path, as it has been the route followed by wayfarers and travellers to the island since Cuthbert's death. It is marked the entire way by a line of timber poles from the mainland to the entrance to Lindisfarne village. Lindisfarne is intimately connected with the history of Christianity in Britain. The Northumbrian king Oswald summoned an Irish monk named Aidan from Iona, the island monastery of the southwest coast of what is now Scotland, to be bishop of his kingdom. Oswald granted Aidan and his companions the small tidal island of Lindisfarne, on which to found a monastery. Indeed, Aidan established his monastery here in 635 AD, and the Christian message was established and sent out into the pagan north. This is furthered by the fact that the gloriously stunning illuminated Lindisfarne Gospels were created here around the turn of the 8th century by Edfrith, Bishop of Lindisfarne. According to an inscription added in the 10th century at the end of the original text, the manuscript was made in honour of God and of Saint Cuthbert. The Lindisfarne Gospels, and others like it, helped define the growing sense of Englishness, a spirit consolidated by the Venerable Bede, the historian monk, in his The Ecclesiastical History of the English People, completed in 731 AD. Today, visitors flock to the current 12th century Lindisfarne Priory to see the original resting place of Saint Cuthbert, built on the site of the 7th century church where his tomb once stood. However, following the Viking raids in the 9th century, the monks of Lindisfarne decided to flee. They took with them their most precious possessions, including the relics of Saint Cuthbert and the Lindisfarne Gospels. They wandered first for a full 7 years, when they were given a church at Chesterley Street near Durham. In the late 10th century, another Danish invasion threatened, so the body of Cuthbert was moved again, this time to Ripon in North Yorkshire, for a few months before Cuthbert was once more carted off. The intention was to return to Chesterley Street, but on the way the bones lay at Durham, where apparently signs were shown indicating that it was the place the saint wished to be buried. Located some 600 feet southwest of Lindisfarne, this small cell was also used by Egbert, Cuthbert's successor. Identified now by a small wooden cross, the island's surviving remains include a T-shaped chapel consisting of a room divided into 2 compartments, creating a possible cell and oratory, and a northwest circular mound associated with Cuthbert's original circular cell. The chapel foundations appear to be primarily medieval in date, not contemporary to Cuthbert's lifetime, but it is likely they were rebuilt for the purposes of medieval pilgrimage, as a tourist attraction for pilgrims to visit and observe where the saint had lived and worshipped, which is still the case to this very day.
The archaeology that's coming out of the ground at the moment about the Anglo-Saxon community at Lindisfarne is really exciting, and it shows that where we do have that later medieval building, the community itself was very nearby, and actually that site was the site of Cuthbert and Aidan's community. So there is continuity, and with anything Anglo-Saxon, it's very hard to reconstruct the space realistically in a genuine way, because they built in timber predominantly. You know, why are they on headlands? Why are they on tidal islands? There's a choice, and they're chosen because they're beautiful, spiritual, special places.
Situated to the priory's rear is a grassy mound known as the Hough, upon which are these rectangular foundations thought to be a former watchtower. In his account of Cuthbert's death, the Venerable Bede mentions a similar structure from which the monks of Lindisfarne learned of news of Cuthbert's death across the sea on Inner Farne. When the news came, those attending him lit 2 torches as a prearranged signal of his passing. A vivid view of Farne can be obtained from the watchtower here, raising the possibility that this is the same building recounted by Bede. The structure is also known as the Chapel of the Lamp, and is thought to be the site of an early form of lighthouse dating from the 14th century, originally operated by the priors. But the story of Cuthbert does not end there. Following his death on Inner Farne Island in 687 AD, his body was buried in Lindisfarne Priory, where his tomb quickly became a magnet for pilgrims, as miracles were reported at his grave. In fact, so numerous were they that Cuthbert was called the wonder worker of England. Journeys end for me, and I am reminded of the words of Abraham Cowley. Curiosity does, no less than devotion, pilgrims make.